So, you're entering Storm of Stratagems KVK. Welcome to one of the best KVKs in Rise of Kingdoms. But there is a lot to unpack with this KVK, and my goal is to help make it easy for you to understand the timelines, the maps, and the best stratagems to use to succeed. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms video from your very own Chappy Gaming. And today, we are talking about Storm of Stratagems. This is one of the Season of Conquest KVK types that is very complex, but also a ton of fun, and it offers a lot of diversity of ways that you can play. Now, before we get into it, Storm of Stratagems begins with 50 days, so it's a little bit of a smaller KVK, and you have about 6 camps in your KVK. Now, there are also a couple of mechanics that make this KVK a little bit unique. The first of which is going to be the Alliance Arrow Towers that you see right there. Alliance Arrow Towers are a new skill that has been added fairly recently, which actually allows you to convert flags to arrow towers. Now, what does this mean? When you convert a flag to an arrow tower, it attacks nearby non-friendly cities. So, in the instance of a major whale KVK, like against 1960, all those whales TPing in that end up right on top of your flags, you can actually turn an arrow tower on them, and then it'll just beam down their durability and will ultimately cause them to teleport, which is super handy. It's really scary too if you're the one who's actually getting attacked. I had this happen with me, but that's how these Alliance Arrow Towers work. If you're wondering how this works in game, I can actually show you. So let's show you this real quick. Here we are, we have a flag, and let's just click on a flag that we got, and you can remodel it. Now, you can turn up to 5 flags into arrow towers, and you recover these chances over the course of a day. So over the course of 5 days, you'll get 5 more arrow towers that you can convert. Now, that said, I also don't believe that they last as arrow towers forever. It should be a finite duration. That said, I don't believe it actually says what that duration is here, but I'll leave it in the comment section below if you guys want to learn more. Now, there's also a new ability with counter rallies. Whenever one of your coalition strongholds, for example, Alliance Fortress, Crusader Flag, Pass, Holy Sites, or cities is targeted by an enemy rallied army, you can launch a counter rally. Now, we're all familiar with counter rallies in Rise of Kingdoms. However, this specific type of counter rally will immediately set out once it's reached its troop capacity and all troops have arrived, meaning you do not have to wait for all of the different marches to get in before you actually deploy that counter rally, which is a really handy thing, although you will want to start using some anchors. Now, everything else is just about the same in this KVK, aside from the stratagems, which we'll be talking about next. Let's take a look at the map to give you some insight into exactly how this KVK is structured. So this map is a little bit different than most. What you'll notice here is you have 6 main camps in Storm of Stratagems, which means that you're probably going to want to arrange a 3v3 KVK. The general recommendation that I've seen is actually you want Fire, Greenwood, and Wind, or Daybreak, Earth, and Water as the allies. It makes it so there's a lot of fun. There's fighting in almost every zone. Generally, I've heard that's a fun time. I've also played Storm of Stratagems, and I have to say it is a ton of fun. Now, alongside the map, a lot of questions I always get are around timelines, and I intentionally waited until one of my accounts was in this KVK to try and provide those for you. So first things first, let's look at the actual Chronicles here. I'm in this KVK, we're about halfway through. As you can see, you have your Karuak, it still hasn't been updated, and then you have your Stratagem Folios. As you progress through the KVK, you will unlock more and more Stratagem Folios. You start with the Beginner's Folio, and then you start to unlock the Strategists and Provisioners, and then you move on to the Battle Master and the Guardian's Folio. All of these open in very different timelines, and it matters because you're going to be wanting to configure your stratagems to be the best that they can be before you get into battle. Now, just to put things into perspective here, we are not in Kingsland yet, and I do have access to most of the stratagems. So here you go. This is everything that's left. I have access to just about all the folios that there are. Now, you may be saying, Chappy, I can't just go off of you going through this quickly. I need to understand exactly what the timelines are. I got you covered. So here is some actual insight. Special shout out to whoever made this. I'm going to be linking this Excel doc in the description below. This is a spectacular document that I found online. I am super thankful for it. If you want to use it, you can use it too. It tracks all of the different timelines. But I'm going to be using this in conjunction with my Chronicles to actually give you an idea of when each portfolio is going to become available to you. So the first portfolio, as we saw here, is actually going to open up for you after the event of Revenge. Now, Revenge is just before Pass 4 opening. So that's when you're really going to get to configure that very first portfolio. So there you go. And you can see that there. Now, what is really going to be in these first sets of folios? As you can see, you have the Strategist Folio and the Provisioner's Folio. And the biggest difference between the two of these is actually that with the Strategist Folio, you're going to get an extra leadership skill, whereas with the Provisioner's Folio, you're going to get an extra support skill. Now, how does this actually shake out? Well, let's double check which these are. The support skills are going to be more of these skills that just kind of improve the quality of life in game, whereas the Strategist Folio and these leadership skills are going to be much more about the combat and dealing damage. So typically, my recommendation is when these first folios open, you're probably going to want to go with the Strategist Folio instead of the Provisioner's Folio because it's going to help you more in battle. And if you're planning on using an artifact, which we'll talk about later, you're especially going to want to get that Strategist Folio. Now let's jump back to our timeline to see exactly when the next set opens up. The next time that a folio is going to open is not going to be until Siege of the Land, which is just before Pass 7 opening. So you're really going to make sure that you have the best stratagems well in advance. And you're actually going to be able to test out your configurations because you have Pass 4 opening, you have Pass 5, and you have Pass 6. And looking in-game right now, I believe that the only folio you're going to have available at that point is really going to be the Strategist portfolio. So if we go in, yeah, you've got Strategist Folio, and then nothing else opens until Siege the Land. And Siege the Land, if we look at our map, our timeline here, is not going to be right until before Pass 7 opening. So let's talk about which stratagems you're really going to want to be using, because I think that this is a major element of this KVK that's going to have a huge impact onto how you play. Once again, if you do want this timeline, you can get it in the description. I will be linking to this. Again, I did not create this. Whoever did is an absolute legend though. So let's actually take a look at the stratagems available to us, and let's talk about which you're probably going to want to use. So as you heard me mention, you're most likely going to be able to use the Strategist Folio for most of your fighting. So let's just take a look at that one because I think that's the most relevant. So here we are. And there are a bunch of different skills here. Now, there are a couple that I think are more valuable than others. The first is going to be an artifact. Artifacts are huge. When you equip an artifact to a secondary commander, their unit type will change. If you're unfamiliar with artifacts, they are one of the best things in Rise of Kingdoms. What this means is you could have a couple of unorthodox pairings. Some of the top pairings that I've seen are Ho Chi Bing with YSG, Scipio with Zhuge Liang, or my personal favorite, Attila with Luce, or Luce Attila. So there are a bunch of different pairings that you can run with these artifacts. This also means that you can diversify your marches if you don't currently have the meta setups that you would like. Those marches that I mentioned earlier are probably going to be some of the best pairings that you can have. There are some others. Once Ragnar comes out, we did some testing. Nevsky Ragnar is a completely OP. Definitely try it out if you haven't already. You will want to use an artifact. So let's say that we're going to be going Attila Luce. So let's select the Lancer's banner. And the reason I suggest this is because not only is your troop going to get a benefit from the artifact, you're getting 3.5% attack there, but your troop is also going to be changing their unit type and dealing more damage. So let's assume that one's already decided. You have a couple other options here. You can do Fierce Assault, which is going to make it so whenever one of your troops deals skill damage, the target takes extra direct damage. That's pretty good if you're using a bunch of skill damage marches. That's one that I would absolutely use. Typically, I avoid the dual debuff ones. When one of your troops is in combat, neither you nor your troop can retrieve normal buffs. You don't want that. You're probably not going to want decisive battle either. And for most players, you're not going to want the stronghold damage. So that only leaves a few options here on your leadership. So you've got Fierce Assault, you have Surprise Strike. Whenever one of your troops deals skill damage with a single target active skill, the target takes extra damage. There's a nice little damage factor multiplier there. But typically you're not going to be using as many single target damage commanders, so this is kind of restrictive. It's a good one if you're using Nevsky or you're using Ho Chu Bing, but nowadays you're seeing a lot more AoE damage commanders than you are single target damage. So what does that leave us? You've got Rousing Drums. Whenever one of your troops receives a buff from another troop, it takes 7% less damage. This is a good one. This is one you're probably going to want to consider. This is pretty substantial. It can only be triggered every 10 seconds, but it means that very often you're going to be taking less damage. It's not a, you have a chance to, it's a guarantee. Damage reduction is huge. This last one, Close Ranks, I don't think it's worth it. You're never really going to be fighting an enemy with more than 300% units. So that covers our leadership guidance here. So realistically, you're probably going to want to use Fierce Assault. That would be my favorite one, I think, if you're going to be using leadership. So let's set that one up. Next, what are our other options? Well, we already know that we've picked an artifact. So we can choose Warfare here. You will unlock more Warfare later though, so I'll talk through all of them because I think it's worth going through anyhow. The first is going to be Inspired. This is a really good one, especially if you're only running a handful of marches, right? 3 to 4, because this is going to buff your artifact march even further. Candidly, the artifact marches tend to be really OP. Ho Chu Bing with YSG deals a ton of damage. Attila Luce deals a ton of damage. So if you add this extra buff, you're going to be even stronger, and 5% all damage is huge. Now there are other options though. Blood in the Water. Whenever one of your troops defeats a troop from an enemy camp, the cooldowns for Surprise Strike and Fierce Assault are reset. So that's not bad. However, let's be honest, how frequently are you defeating an enemy troop, right? In a murder ball, sometimes you are, but are you going to get the credit for actually defeating that troop if it's getting swarmed down by someone else? It feels iffy to me. There are also things like this. Reduce the cooldowns of Surprise Strike and Fierce Assault. Just reduce them all together by 10 seconds. That's not a bad deal. That's actually a pretty good one. But there are others that I want to make sure I go through. Again, we're probably not going to do the dual buff there. We're probably not going to do the stronghold damage unless you're swarming. You can do this one, the combat experience. I probably wouldn't. Essentially, the way this works is when one of your rallied or garrison marches is in combat, the damage it deals is increased. But realistically, if it's in a structure, I don't think it's worth it. Now, there are a couple other things that you can look at here. So you've got Bloody Bravery. I would skip that one. You've got Not One Step Back. Increases severely wound reduction of another skill. Probably wouldn't use that. We already said we're not going to go down that route. This one is not bad, though. Whenever one of your troops defeats a troop from a different camp, your troop's single target active skill deals 12% more damage for 20 seconds. That's really big. If you are using a single target damage, so let's say you didn't go with Fierce Assault, right? You would go Surprise Strike and you would go Invictus. Those are going to be the two best Warfare ones that you can probably get. Now, if you're using AoE, you might go with Fierce Assault and Annihilation. Whenever one of your troops deals skill damage to 3 or more target troops at the same time, it gains 12% attack. That's going to be really good if you're in a murder ball. So just keep that in mind. Now, there are a couple others that I think are really good over here. So you've got the bonus shield. I like this one. Whenever one of your troops buffs another troop, it gains a shield. So that's handy because if you have a bunch of different marches that have support skills, that's a good one. And then you have Beatdown. This is one that I've used a couple times, but it wouldn't help you in this particular setup. The way this one works is it plays off of the surrounding troops effect. This is mainly like the Nevsky skill, but to be honest, I would probably go with Invictus, Annihilation, or Common Foe if you're going through and you're setting up your Warfare skills here. Now let's look through some of the other skills here. You have Support. Now, you may have seen that there are a bunch of different support things if you change stratagems. So if we confirm and we go with the Provisioner's Folio or the Guardian's Folio, you get a bunch more support ones. Typically, I would rather go for the Battle Master's Folio and the Strategist Folio again. So let's go in here and let's actually talk about what these are. Now, what you will notice is there are a bunch of different support ones, and they all play off the same skills that we have before. So one thing is Dog Eat Dog. Your garrisoned or rallied units deal extra damage to lower tier enemy units. This effect does not apply to field troops. That's fine. I think if you're playing structures, that's not a bad deal, and if you have a lot of room for this, but that's typically not what I'm going to go for. Now, the other thing that I would suggest is Logistics Whiz. If you're a rally leader, this is a huge one. Why? This means that your farms can add 2 different marches to your rallies. It means that your allies can add 2 different marches to your rallies. It's going to be huge for dealing more damage. Absolutely. If you're a rally leader, you need Logistics Whiz. Now, there are a few other ones that you might want. Kind-Hearted, increase your hospital capacity by 30%. I don't know if you really need that. To be honest, I would go for Makeshift Splints over that, right? Healing reduction in cost is going to be better for you than hospital capacity because you're going to be healing pretty consistently, but you're probably not going to need that space. I would hope not. There's also Triage, reduces the number of severely wounded troops by 8%. This is a really good one. I personally am a fan of this. Severely wounded units can be reduced by up to 500,000 units. I like that. I think if you're in combat, you want better trades, but this is my favorite one. 1 heart, 1 mind. Your field troops deal 3% extra damage. Done. All around. Use this. If you're not using 1 heart, 1 mind, I think you're making a mistake. It can also stack up to 5 times if you're garrisoning something. So I'm a big fan of this. This is a really good skill. If it were me, what I would typically go with is I would usually go with the Makeshift Splints and the 1 heart, 1 mind if you're using this stratagem. And that's going to be in the Battle Master or Guardian's Folio. Anytime that you're going to have 2 of those. To be honest, in the Strategist Folio, which is the one that we were referring to earlier, I would probably go with 1 heart, 1 mind. I think this is going to be the best support skill that you can have. So that walked through all of the different stratagems that are available to you. We've walked through the timelines. We've walked through the map. And hopefully all of this has been immensely helpful to you. I wish you the best of luck in your Storm of Stratagems KVK. I know that 1079 is doing great in this one. This is where my farm is that I'm walking you through. So if you guys have enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on the video and hit that subscribe button right over there, bottom right-hand corner. Helps me out a ton. And if you like this series, let me know. I'm planning on making more videos walking through all of the different Season of Conquest KVK types. And thank you all. Chappy out.